On this episode of a podcast, I'm going to talk about cheese chased by a dog and Bond villains. It should be getting chased by a dog. I don't know. We'll get into that story soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Luke Who's Talking podcast with me. Spoilers, Luke. One day, it might not be. I might sell off this brand for millions, and somebody called like Jim can host the Luke Who's Talking podcast. Because welcome to the Luke Who's Talking podcast. I'm Jim. Why? Just retire it. Anyway, let's get into the first story. Cheese. Now, a couple of weeks ago, actually it was like last week, I don't know when it was. I just take notes and I talk about things. The time frame, Anyway, so I was now here in Australia, you can buy, it's like cans or contain. It's not a can, it's a container of cheese. It's like grated mozzarella, and on the top it has two different, the lid has two different little flaps. So one flap you can open up, and there's three holes and like a sort of a grid grid system, so you can tip out and shake your cheese on whatever you're cooking. Or on the other side, it's just under the lid, it's just all open, so you can just basically dump. I suppose if you have to use like if you're making something, it's like, you've got to use a cup of this cheese, you would use that bigger exodus to fill up your cup or whatever, rather than like the grid system on the other side of the lid. Does that make sense? I don't know if it actually does. Anyway, so I was having some, I would assume pasta, because what else would I put grated cheese on? We'll say pasta. So I got the pasta from the fridge, and what I usually do, because it's grated, like fine grated up in the container, is I usually give it a bit of a shake before I tip any of the cheese out onto whatever I'm having, because sometimes it does sort of get stuck together. Being in the fridge as well, it does sort of stick together sometimes. So I gave it a bit of a shake. Anyway, as I was shaking, the one part of the lid wasn't quite closed properly. And of course, it was a side of the lid that didn't have the grid. It was like the whole open side of the lid. So when they're shaking the cheese, then there's cheese everywhere. There's cheese on me, and I wasn't happy because I'd actually just gone not long, got out of the shower. So I had cheese on me. There was this grated cheese on the table. There was cheese like meters away from me. And like the cheese, it's sort of like sand. It's like sort of like, it looked like there was sand on the ground. So there was cheese everywhere. So I was like, great. Great. Anyway, so Mum has one of these stick vacuum things. So I thought, I'll go and get that and, just suck the cheese up off the floor anyway. It'll be easy. Went to get the vac. And long story short there, the vac is an absolute piece of shit. It is an absolute dunger. So I actually ended up getting the broom, sweeping the cheese up in a pile and just scooping it and tossing it in the bin that way with a dustpan and broom. But yeah, I went to shake the cheese and I got cheesed, I suppose. Yeah, I got cheesed. That was fun. So moral of the story is, make sure your cheese lid's closed if you're going to be shaking it up. Make sure you do that. Yeah, so you didn't know, but I actually stopped the recording and started recording again just to tell you, make sure your cheese lid is closed. So, as some of you may know, I believe I talked about it, no doubt I would have talked about it at the start of the year. I was about to say at the start of the show. I've got a bit of a goal. I want to ride 1,000 kilometres this year. I'm already 20% of the way there. Oh my God, 20%. Whoa, that means I've ridden 200 kilometres at least. Whoa. Actually, at the time of recording, I've ridden 190. But I'm pretty confident between now, which is Monday, and Friday when you're going to be hearing this, I'm going to at least do one 10K ride. Could be tonight, might be Wednesday, or it'll either be later tonight, that being Friday. Anyway, the other day I was out on the bicycle doing a bit of a ride. Anyway, I was riding along and I slightly altered my typical route. I thought, instead of going like down left here and then right, I'll go to the next block up and then take the left and then take the right. So the distance isn't going to be really any different. It's just that little bit of a, just going up the next block. Anyway, so as I was going, I went past my typical left-hand turn, and as I was sort of going up the hill, I hear this almost like a trotting noise behind me, and I look, and there's a dog there. Right, just it's a pup, I'd say, not like a little pup, but like a young dog. So I had a thought of, is this dog want to bite me? I don't know. So I sped up, and I thought I'll burn it off. The dog will stop following me. And so I got down, went up the road, made my left, rolled down the hill, looked behind me. The dog was sort of still there, so I thought I'll loop back round and go to like one of the houses where this dog is from and be like, hey, is this your dog? Like, assuming the dog still followed me. Anyway, the dog stopped following me, so I sort of did me looped around the block, like, again, to get back to where I wanted to be. Oh, plot twist, there's the dog. And I'm like, God. Anyway, so I stopped, got off my bike, and the dog didn't have a collar on, so I'm like, okay, well, I can't look to see where you're from. At least he didn't try to bite my leg off. So I sort of started walking back to the area where the dog initially started following me. I sort of slowly made my way back to there. Anyway, there were some people there at a house that were unloading some furniture, and the dog then went up to them, and I'm like, it must be their dog. So I got back on my bicycle and continued on to where I continued my route. Anyway, that ride was actually a little bit longer than usual because I looped, like a double backed around the block, which I usually don't do. Anyway, but yeah, this dog just come from nowhere and started following me. I'm like, didn't have a collar, nothing. And I was sort of like, was this dog want to bite my foot off? What? I don't know. So I was like, okay, so, and I probably tricked myself into thinking, well, I was like, I'll go around the block. The dog might follow me, so I'll go to like a house and be like, is this your dog? Or have you seen this dog before? Do you know where it comes from? So the dog stopped following me, but I didn't realise because I'm not always looking over my shoulder, especially down quiet back streets. And down the sort of dog again, I was like, oh, great, okay. But the dog, I assume, went back to where it had to go. But, people, if you've got a dog, put a collar on it, put a tag on it, make sure it's secure somewhere, like in your yard. Like these people, I assume the dog belonged to the people who were unloading furniture. They could have tied the dog up. They could have kept the dog in their car. They could have, I don't know, made sure the dog wasn't chasing a random, well, I won't say chasing, I'll say following a random cyclist. I mean, come on, it's not that hard. If you got a dog, look after it. Make sure it's safe. Get it in your yard, label it, do something. I don't want it following me. Bond villains. Okay, let's talk about Bond villains. Now, actually quite a few episodes back, let me have a look. It was you can hear me scrolling, episode 5. I talked about how are Starfleet Command funded, because I've been watching Star Trek, the original series at the time. So I was like, how is Starfleet Command, how are they funded? And also, how's Kirk still a captain? Because he's such an intergalactic floozy. How's he survived? Anyway, the other day I was watching, this is a spoiler for the movie review coming next episode, or review, whatever. Anyway, it's coming up next episode. I'll talk about the movies I've been watching, but I watched You Only Live Twice. The Bond. That's the one it was. Yeah. Anyway, it's the Japanesey Bond. Anyway, Blofeld's in it, played by Donald Pleasance. He does a great job. But his facilities right, are ridiculous. He has a rocket. He has plentiful amount of staff. He has his lair is in like a hollowed out volcano. Okay? When I was watching this, I thought to myself, how does he afford this? How can he afford this? How does he have money to afford this ridiculous construction? And the people in the nearby, and like the people in the nearby villages and whatever, like, oh yeah, some dodgy, like, ooh, something, yeah, if you walk up there, you won't come back. They don't know what goes on. That is also ridiculous to me, because you can't build this facility in a volcano without people knowing that you're doing it. Surely that is absolutely ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. You know what it is? It's ridiculous because, and like also the villains, where do they get their money from? Like, how do they afford this? Do they have jobs? Like, none of them seem to do anything. Like, how does Donald Pleasant, like Blofeld, where's his money come from? Where do his squillions come from for him to be able to build these, what are his expertise? How can he get rockets, right? How can he, how does he hire people? How does he hire people to do this? It's ridiculous. Yeah, and how do the villains get their goons? How do they hire them? I don't know. Do they like go to a private agency and be like, yeah, I need 50 thugs to protect a volcano, facility I've got. At least in Goldfinger, what's his name? I've completely forgotten his name. The gold guy trades gold or whatever. That's his income. Or in Dr. No, he's a doctor. He has that's his trade. He has a career. But some of the villains, like, where's your money from? How do you get it? How do you fund these ridiculous projects? That's why, Elon Musk would make a great Bond villain, because we know he is a business person, he's SpaceX founder, CEO, whatever he is, founder, one of Tesla. That said, Tesla doesn't make any money. PayPal, that's probably his big thing as well. So he has, like, we can be like, yeah, that's where Elon Musk gets his wealth. That's where he gets his cash from. But these are like Bond villains. I'd like a or maybe they could have like a few spin-offs of the Bond villains, right? Of how they become villainous, and they could be like going through how they get their business savvy and how they get their money to be able to afford this sort of stuff. Imagine going into a bank, right? You're walking down the road, like, oh, let's go into good old Chase here, right? Chase Manhattan. There's a throwback for you. And you're like, we'll go into Chase, or if you're here in Australia, like, we'll go into the Combank and we'll apply for a business loan, right? We'll apply for a business loan. I'm sure they'll give you one. No, they won't. Maybe HSBC would, because they're dodgy and they funded like Mexican cartels. But, other banks, I don't know. Chase might. I don't know. Oh, JP Morgan, they're an investment bank, aren't they? So you could probably go there and see them. I don't know, maybe like Macquarie here in Australia. They might give you some money, but, how do Bond villains get money to build and have these ridiculous, this infrastructure? I don't know. Guess what? I don't know. Well, that is it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Tweet me at L_who's_talking. Send me an email, lucastalkingpod@gmail.com, or on the Facebooks. Listen to the pod. Give me some feedback. Give me some juice, please. I feel that some of the better stories of when I just sort of like rant on a little bit, like just with the Bond villain one, I don't know. How about you tell me what do you feels? What do you feels on that? Anyway, I'll catch you next time.